When the door to my office opened, I saw a man whose age was easy to guess by his gait. Cautious, like someone who had been through a lot. But there was something unexpected in his eyes, a mix of weariness and quiet hope. His name was George. He was 72. He sat across from me, straightened up, and as if gathering his courage, said, "Doctor, I thought my intimate life was over. Then I changed just 4 foods in my diet, and everything changed." His words weren't spoken with enthusiasm, but with surprise, as if he himself couldn't quite believe what was happening. "It's not easy to surprise me, Dr. James. I've spent over 30 years working in men's health, and I've heard many stories about energy and confidence making a comeback. But this story was different, because it didn't start with a complaint or a request for a prescription. It started with a story of hope. George hadn't taken any medications or supplements. All he did was change what he put on his plate. He started eating differently. Doctors often underestimate the power of food, forgetting that the body responds to nutrition faster than to medicine. When I asked what exactly he had changed, he started listing vegetables. The first one he mentioned was beets. Ordinary, familiar, since childhood. I smiled. It wasn't the first time I'd heard how beets had changed someone's life. But each story is touching in its own way. George said he began roasting them in the oven with olive oil and lemon. At first, he did it without much enthusiasm, just following a friend's advice. But after just 2 weeks, he noticed that his morning fatigue had disappeared. His right foot no longer felt cold, and he had an unexpected surge of energy. What touched me most was how he spoke about his wife. He said, "We hold hands again, just because, for no reason." And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about health, it was about returning to oneself. Because food is not just calories and vitamins, it's a choice. It's an act of self-care that opens the door to new sensations, to new relationships. Sometimes, what we need isn't magic or pharmaceuticals, but simply a mindful approach to what we put on our plate. That's where the journey to change begins. George's story inspired me to talk more about the power of those very vegetables that, at first glance, seem incapable of miracles. And yet, they're the ones that improve men's quality of life, especially after 60. The first on his list was beets. This deep red root vegetable might seem too simple to affect anything important, but in reality, it holds the secret to vascular health. Beets are rich in nitrates, which the body converts into nitric oxide. This compound works gently but powerfully. It dilates blood vessels, allowing blood to flow freely and actively. As we age, blood vessels lose elasticity, narrow, and struggle to deliver blood to the extremities and intimate areas. That's what causes feelings of coldness, fatigue, reduced desire, and loss of confidence. But when nitric oxide restores the flexibility of vessels, blood starts to flow easily again, and men feel a renewed surge of energy. George said that, for the first time in years, he woke up early without an alarm, simply because he felt rested. He began going for morning walks, and one day even went dancing with his wife. It all started with a beet salad. And that's not a metaphor. The second vegetable we talked about was spinach. George admitted that he hadn't even known what it looked like raw. "I thought it was rabbit food," he laughed. But when I explained that spinach, like beets, is rich in nitrates and also contains magnesium, a mineral that helps relax blood vessels and regulates blood pressure, he decided to give it a try. Magnesium plays an important role in testosterone production and helps muscles function properly. And not just the ones used in workouts, but also those that power internal organs. Spinach became part of George's morning omelet. He noticed he was sleeping better, recovering faster after walks, and, most importantly, feeling like a man again. His voice grew more confident, and he spoke about himself with more respect. This wasn't magic, it was physiology. When the body gets the right nutrients, it responds. And then food becomes more than just food. It becomes care, strength, and inner support. George realized that eating well wasn't a chore, but an opportunity to regain his health and intimacy. And with that, the joy of life. When George told me about the 2 remaining vegetables, I smiled. These foods are often underestimated, especially by men. The first one was garlic. Some see it merely as a seasoning, others avoid it because of the smell. But those who choose to include it in their diet quickly realize it's much more than just a flavorful addition. At first, George hesitated. "Doctor, I don't want to smell like a kitchen all day," he joked, but I explained how fresh garlic works. Allicin, the active compound released when it's crushed, helps relax blood vessels, reduces inflammation, and eases internal tension. A few weeks later, George came back and said, "You know, I never thought garlic could affect how I feel. The tightness in my chest is gone, and I can climb stairs more easily now." But what surprised him most was the feeling of warmth. Not metaphorical, but literal. His fingertips no longer felt cold. It was as if his blood had come back to life. Garlic is nature's vascular cleanser. It works gradually, without the spikes in blood pressure or side effects that medications sometimes cause. It makes blood flow more smoothly, vessels more elastic, and a man more confident. The last item on George's list was celery. This vegetable is often seen as a crunchy element in diet recipes, but its impact on men's health can't be overstated. George admitted he started adding it to his morning juices just out of curiosity. But within a couple of weeks, he noticed changes. His blood pressure became stable, mood swings disappeared, and the inner irritability that used to come with fatigue was gone. Celery contains phthalides, compounds that relax blood vessel walls, and essential minerals like magnesium and potassium. These regulate heart rhythm, strengthen the nervous system, and support testosterone production. Apigenin, another active compound in celery, helps reduce inflammation and maintain hormonal balance. George said, "I don't just feel better, I feel lighter, like I've stepped back into my own body." And that phrase stayed with me, because this is exactly what many men over 60 lack: a sense of wholeness, strength, and control over their own bodies. Garlic and celery are like invisible helpers. You don't hear them, they don't draw attention, but every day they work to help a man feel worthy again. And that, perhaps, is the most important thing. When I met with George 2 months after his first visit, I immediately noticed the difference. He didn't just look more energetic. He moved differently, with the calm dignity of someone who feels confident in himself. He didn't say much, but every word sounded like the result of deep inner work. "Doctor," he said, "I feel like I'm coming back to myself. And you know what's amazing? It all started with food." His words were simple, but behind them was more than just a change in diet. It was a true story of returning to life. Many people think food is only about weight, calories, or cholesterol, but food is also a language of care. When a man over 60 makes a choice, not out of habit, but consciously, adding beets to his plate, sautéing spinach, chopping garlic, juicing celery, in that moment, he's telling his body, "I remember you. I want you to feel good." It's more than just nutrition. It's a relationship. And that changes everything. I've seen dozens, hundreds of men who thought their time had passed. Some stayed silent about their problems. Others had begun to accept the absence of desire or energy. But almost always, when change did happen, it didn't start with pills or medical procedures. It started with a simple question: what can I do for myself today? And the answers were often small actions: adding roasted beets to a salad, putting spinach in an omelet, grating garlic into soup, eating a few stalks of celery for breakfast. These are small steps, but each one is an investment in health, in warmth within the body, in the desire to be close and to share yourself. George had started taking trips to the countryside with his wife again. They walked, holding hands, like they had many years ago. He hadn't become a different person. He had simply become himself again. The part of him that had gone quiet under the weight of years, worries, and fatigue had returned. All it took was a little attention to the body, a bit of self-belief, and just a small effort in the kitchen. And that's inspiring. Intimacy, energy, confidence, they don't disappear with age. They're simply waiting for you to remind yourself that it's still possible. Your body hasn't forgotten how to feel alive. It's just waiting for you to give it a chance. And it all begins with something simple: care, warmth, and a plate of the right food.